Hello everyone and welcome back to Beyond the Veil background information. We're doing a creature profile and we're going to be doing it about gargoyles because now we're on to we're still sort of in the elemental part, and the fact that we're dealing with creatures that are linked to one particular sort of element, like earth and stuff like that. But as usual, we're going to do a quote from Story Weather Mentioned, give you the background details that inspired me to use them in the universe, and then give you my creature profile. So let's go into this. So we're doing about gargoyles. Gargoyles are always on the side of good. No one's exactly sure. No one's no one's exactly sure on where they came from, but it's thought that the angels that were severed from their wings in the war in heaven carved them out to protect humans. It might explain why churches are fond of them. Quote from Snake Amongst the Roses. I tend to consider myself quite lucky in the manner of gargoyles. Firstly, because my sister Lucia let me borrow a book called Carved in Stone, a paranormal romance with gargoyles, and it was really enjoyable. And also because we loved it, and she ended up getting the complete trilogy after a long while, and I haven't borrowed the last one yet, but that was my introduction to gargoyles written for romance. I also recall the X-Files episode with the artist that was linked to this interesting concept of a gargoyle that was really kind of exciting, and I love the use of them in the Watch in Terry Pratchett's Discworld, something I was inspired to use for my gargoyles helping in the Veil Agents. But most importantly, I grew up watching Disney's Gargoyles series. The mythology they created was amazing. The characters were awesome, and Keith David as Goliath left a lasting impression. Not to mention, I realised Demona was even more amazing a character when I learnt more about it, and the series that we never got to see if you couldn't afford the right channels in the 90s. So gargoyles are really are a fascinating thing. They are, by all facts, sculptured beings used in architecture, particularly around churches, that link to the French word gargouille, relating to a waterspout, as some are made like that, and more correctly, the ones we think of are in fact the grotesque. There's lots of ideas as to why they might have been made this way. There's always the thought running around that by covering the sacred building with grotesques to match the demons of hell, they will actually ward them off. Some places you're not sure if they're not there to loom over and sort of urge people into the church by reminding them just how easily it is for dark thoughts to be present and always watching them. But they captivate us. Some can be more humorous than you expect, and there's a famous one that's actually carved with the likeness of a science fiction legend. Now, another channel, Monstrum, who I recommend you having a look at if you're interested in any of these sort of things, because they do quite a good deal of stuff there. They did a very good episode about gargoyles that I have included in the resources, and in general, most of us understand that the grotesque is the more appropriate term, and there is not really any true myth or presence of them in mythology. In many ways, one might connect them to the golem in their folkloric presence, and they are predominantly linked to France, although Disney linked them to Scotland. In fact, in all things, gargoyles are creations of fiction, and so there are no strict rules about them. There are some common aspects. Some can turn into living creatures at night and hunt humans, some can be cursed by their creator, and some can return to stone at sunlight and be destroyed when their statue is destroyed. I remember my own understanding of the more scary sort of gargoyle was through the X-Files, and through someone telling me an interesting story purported to be French in origin but could easily have been an amalgamation and made up, and was told to me by a friend. So here's how that goes, and it sort of inspired me. So it goes: an artist has a problem. He used to be great and sculpt beautiful angels wanted by everyone. But after a tragic death, all he can create is the grotesques. No one wants his art, and then one day his fiancée leaves him to join a rich man who can certainly afford her. In his hatred, he pours all his violence and anger into the gargoyle he creates, a being as big as himself, winged and hideous, with a violent look on his face, and despite it being made of stone, eyes that seem to follow him around the room. He then states a curse to his former lover upon the being, and then after creating this being, he gets his ability to create beautiful sculptures again. The Gargoyle sits in his workshop each night, and every morning he tells it all his frustrations before he gets to work on others. And then he starts to hear stories of his former love having nightmares at night and seeing a monster. Other people who upset him start talking about something horrible killing their pets or breaking into their windows and looming over them at night. Then one night the artist learns his ex has been murdered. He is shocked and everyone is looking at him, and even more so when the description of what killed her is the gargoyle he created. He cannot believe it, and the police come to check his art studio, only to find the gargoyle coated in the blood of his former lover, and he is blamed. When he is placed in prison, the statue mysteriously cracks and the nightmares end. You can tell that story is really a sort of mix of a tragic sort of revenge, heavily. You can tell that story is really a sort of a mix of a tragic sort of revenge plot, heavily encouraged by the golem that we'll cover next time, and that there is a vengeful element to it. I certainly also like to think of the Weeping Angels in Doctor Who and how they have a little inspiration for gargoyle fiction. But once again, it's fictional, the whole idea of them coming to life. I prefer the more friendly aspect that the Disney cartoon introduced, as well as in the romance series of a doomed guardian. And well, because I had the Mastema as grotesque beings helping out, the idea that the gargoyles are linked to them just suited really well. So I hope you'll forgive that this was not not as informative perhaps, because the background around gargoyles is a little architecture, but mostly pop culture. And the monster video is linked in the sources, and everything else I had a look through. Basically, with gargoyles, it really is like, aside from the fact that they're grotesques on churches, like whatever you want to make up as their mythology is up to you. But anyway, here's what I've done with them. So, Sidelight, created by Saviours, which are wingless angels, created to protect sacred spaces from demons, created one after Ball's interference. Physical description: gargoyles consist of two forms: the original gargoyle, which is a spout made of stone that funnels rainwater through its body to protect the sacred structure from rain damage, and also flushing water to keep certain demons held back; and the grotesque, that is more active and stands as a snarling, ready to attack position, about to launch onto any demonic presence that arrives. Gargoyles can all transform into a human form when they need to communicate, and in some places will be active throughout day and night. However, in the veil they are often more active at night when the demons are more active. They often appear as bulky, sometimes they might be viewed as ugly or scary humans, and often steer the prejudices of others, but they are designed to scare. Abilities: they can see demons clearly and have the ability to come alive from their stone carved form, and also to fight demons and dangerous veil beings attacking others, not to mention can heal as soon as they return to stone. And well, concrete works great on chips and missing chunks. They are practically immortal, although certain magic and certain beings are able to kill them with spells and water taken from the few rivers in hell. Most known for being protectors of sacred spaces and not always being born but being carved. Weaknesses: certain magical spells can be used to keep them a stone. Smashing them to pieces and turning them into dust, but then dropping the dust into different rivers can stop them being healed. They are also destroyed by water splashed onto them taken from the rivers within hell. Number unclear, but it is thought to be at least 1,000,000, as many of them do not need to eat and are often added into city structures for atmosphere. They're rather popular. Well-known beings to be announced at the moment. Characters in stories: I've got one as a main character in a Hexen story I've got that's based in Finnish Vale, but I've forgotten the name of the story title right now. So I think it's one where I actually mixed. It's very close to another story, so I often get them both mixed up. I'm sure there's a picture of it somewhere around here, though. But anyway, final comments: Gargoyles and Grotesques are so fascinating, and I think almost everyone who ever watched the Disney cartoon in the 90s has a particular set of thoughts on these awesome beings that can be practically anything, because their folklore is pure fiction based. So I hope you found that interesting, and hopefully that sort of encouraged you to think about gargoyles for your own stuff if you're interested in that. But I've got to try and do this now, this kind of advertising. So this month I'm going to be releasing the next book in the Viper Clan series, which is called The Hydra's Breath. It's about the twins Ixchel and Pallas, and their chaotic love lives, because the pair of them are a bit of the idea that once you fall in love, that's all that matters, and nothing, nothing about consequences and things like that. So when things do go sort of tits up, they have to learn and they have to grow up and they have to make very difficult choices and see some of the things they really didn't want to see. So it's an interesting one, and certainly it's part of the Tybalt is a bad guy group, so it could interest you when that comes out. That'll be sometime about the 23rd of June, I hope. I'm editing it at the moment. I had to add another chapter, which is a bit frustrating, but yeah. Anyway, so I've got that going. As always, if you want to know about any of the stories I do and stuff, they're on my Patreon, most of them. I try and update as regularly as I can. And there's interesting things on Patreon. Of course, you get the audio files a month ahead. So yeah, I mean, you can check it out. It's perfectly fine. And next time we're going to talk about Golem. But also, thank you to my Patreon supporters, which are Lucia, Casey, John, and Badgers, and everyone who's also currently watching as a free patron. Thank you for showing interest and keeping an eye on me. So, yeah, thanks for listening. And sorry I'm so bad at advertising.